So yeah, thanks everyone for joining. This is Arvind from Zoho Flow team. And today we are going to see about on-prem SQL integrations using Zoho Flow. So before going into the session, here are few general announcements. Everyone will be on mute by default. And if you have any questions in between, you can raise it via the questions tab. We'll conduct some polls in between and please do participate in it. And the recording of this session will be sent to everyone after this session is over. So let's get started. Today's webinar session is going to be about SQL integrations in Zoho Flow. But before going into that, we'll have a quick overview about on-prem applications and then what is Zoho Flow's on-prem agent and then few SQL applications which is already in Zoho Flow for integration and then few use cases involving those SQL applications. So in our previous webinar, we covered about ManageEngine on-prem applications integration in Zoho Flow. So on-prem applications or applications which are host. Okay, so before going into this, there is a poll coming. Please do participate in it. On-prem applications are applications which are hosted in a private network or private server. And to transfer data and transfer data and get data from those applications, we needed a trusted gateway. And to do that, we have introduced this Zoho Flow on-prem agent, which acts as the trusted bridge between on-premise application and Zoho Flow, and it helps us in transfer data between on-prem applications. So this is how the Zoho Flow on-prem agent works. It receives data from on-prem application and it helps transfer the data to Zoho Flow. And similarly, vice versa, it transfers data from Zoho Flow to the on-prem applications. There is the pictorial representation of the on-prem agent. Let's quickly see how to install this on-prem agent in Zoho Flow. So far, Zoho Flow was only used to connect cloud applications. But with the help of this agent, we can integrate on-premises applications also. So under settings, you will have the agents tab from where you can download the agents file based on your operating system. So you have to download the file and install it. While installing it, you'll be asked the agent key, which will be provided in Zoho Flow. So you have to get the key from Zoho Flow and paste it in the installer and proceed with the installation. And you'll be asked to select the folder in which the agent should be installed. So proceed with that. And once the installation is done, you have to open your terminal, or if you are using Windows, it should be command prompt. From there, you have to open the path in which the agent is installed. And then from there, you have to start the agent using the sh space start agent.sh. All these details will be given in the installer itself. So once you go to the path and start the agent, you have to come back to the Zoho Flow settings agents tab, and there you'll be able to see your agent is being installed. So this is how you should install an on-prem agent. So always before we are going to do any on-prem integration, we need an agent to be installed in our system. Only then we can connect and interact with on-premises application. So Zoho Flow agent is mandatory for on-prem integrations. So before making any on-prem integration, you should make sure your Zoho Flow agent is enabled and it is active. So here is the settings agents tab where your agent will be shown. You have to check the status of the agent, whether it's enabled or disabled. If it's disabled, you have to enable it before perform the integration. And similarly, you can see the status of the agent also over here. If it's inactive, your on-prem application integration will fail. So if you see inactive status of your agent, you have to go to the path in which the agent is installed and then run the sh space start agent.sh to start the agent. So once the agent is started successfully, you can use this ping option in Zoho Flow to check the status of the agent, and the status will be changed if the agent is started over there. So you have to make sure an agent is enabled and the status of the agent is active before performing any on-prem integrations using Zoho Flow. So on-prem applications in Zoho Flow. In our previous webinar, we saw about ManageEngine on-prem applications integration using Zoho Flow. We already have ManageEngine SDP on-prem application, password manager, and a couple of other on-prem application available for integration in Zoho Flow. In this session, we are going to see about SQL applications. We have 4 SQL applications onboarded to Zoho Flow for integration. MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQL Server, and MariaDB. These are the 4 SQL applications we have onboarded in Zoho Flow. Next up is how to create a connection for any on-prem application. This is particularly for MySQL. So if your MySQL is hosted in on-premises, then to create a connection, you need an agent first. So while creating connection for MySQL, you'll have this option. It will ask whether the app is installed on-premise. If you are going to use an on-premises MySQL, then you need to check this checkbox. And as I told, an agent is mandatory for connecting with on-prem applications. So for MySQL on-prem also, you have to select an agent and make sure the agent status is active or not. Only after active, you should proceed with the connection creation. Apart from these two, all the other connection details are normal, like how we do for cloud application. Just the authentication details needs to be provided. Only difference is if it's since it is an on-prem application, you need to check this checkbox and you need to select an agent. One agent can be used to create connections for multiple applications. So you just need one agent in your Zoho Flow to get connected to on-prem applications. So this is for MySQL, which is hosted on premises. Similarly, if you have a cloud hosted MySQL, you don't need the on-prem option and the agent, because since it is a cloud application, you can just provide the connection details and you can authorize and create the connection. The only difference is here you don't need to select the on-premises and no need of an agent because it is a cloud MySQL. Similarly, for the PostgreSQL and other SQL applications, we have the pattern is same. If it's an on-prem, to check the checkbox, choose an agent, and proceed with the connection. If it's a cloud Postgres, there's no need of on-prem agent for connecting. I mean, creating the connection. This is for SQL Server, on-prem SQL Server Cloud, MariaDB, MariaDB Cloud. So these are the 4 applications we have related to SQL in Zoho Flow. So now let's see the triggers and actions available for MySQL in Zoho Flow. For all the applications we have for integration in Zoho Flow, we have this list of triggers and actions. Triggers or triggering event based on which the integration gets started. So for MySQL, we have this triggers row added, which will trigger whenever a new row is added in your MySQL. Similarly, row added or updated, which will trigger whenever a new row is added, as well as when an existing row is edited or updated. So these are the 2 triggering events we have. And then actions, insert row, which basically creates a new row in your MySQL table. And update row updates the table, and fetch row will fetch any row based on a value you provide in that fetch row action. So these are the triggers and actions which we have at the moment. Similarly, the other application, PostgreSQL, SQL Server, MariaDB, all the other SQL application also has the same triggers and actions. So basically, triggers and actions of all the 4 applications are common. And the connection creation pattern is also same. Only difference is you have to select on-prem if it's an on-prem SQL, or if it's a cloud SQL, then you can go without the agent while creating the connection. So these are the triggers and actions which we have at the moment. Now let's see few use cases involving MySQL and Zoho CRM here. In this case, MySQL is going to be my triggering application. I'm going to perform actions in my Zoho CRM. So this is the use case I'm going to show. So whenever a new row is added in my MySQL table, I want to collect the details from there. And based on the details, I need to create a lead in Zoho CRM. So let's see how to set up a flow for this case. So create a flow and select app trigger. Triggering application is MySQL in this case. So MySQL, and then you can see the 2 triggers which we have for MySQL over here. One is row added and the other one is added or updated. So for this case, we need row added trigger so that it gets triggered whenever a new row is added. Next up, the connection step. So while creating the connection, you have to decide if you are going to use your on-premise SQL application. As I told, you have to go with that on-prem checkbox and you should use an agent and then create a connection. Or if it's a cloud hosted MySQL, then go without the agent and create the connection and use it in Flow. You can use both your on-prem as well as cloud MySQL using this. So create the connection, use it, and then select the table which you want to use for this integration. And you have to once the table is selected, you have to select this triggering column. This MySQL trigger, which we have both row added and row added or updated, both are polling triggers. Polling triggers are triggers which will trigger at a particular intervals. For example, this row added trigger will trigger every 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes, this trigger will check in the MySQL table whether any new row got added or not. So based on the column value we provide here, I have selected ID over here. So each 5 minutes, the flow will go and check the table. And if it see any ID got appended in that table, then flow will be triggered. So that is the triggering column value. So once you select it, continue, and the trigger is now set. MySQL row added is the trigger here. And the action which I want is to be in Zoho CRM. So in the app search bar, search for the Zoho CRM, and I'm going to create a lead. So for that, we need create module entry action. Connection for CRM is simple. This is a cloud application, so direct connection creation is possible. Module is going to be leads. And then in the right side, you can see my MySQL table related fields like department experience. These are the fields which I have in my MySQL. So it will be shown under the trigger. So these are the fields which we can use for mapping. And then here, create model entry, I'm just mapping couple of mandatory fields, company and last name and full name. So yeah, once the mandatory fields mapping are done, you can apply changes and turn on the flow to do a test. So this is a test execution in which the name from MySQL is BASDSC and the department is Zoho Flow. These are the two fields which we mapped in the create model entry action. So let's do a test. And now check the create model entry output, and yes, it has created a lead with this ID and the name and the department field which we have mapped. So just to check it out in Zoho CRM with the lead ID. This is the lead which got created by that test execution. Lead name and company has populated accordingly based on the MySQL values. Now let's use a different trigger. Instead of row added, we'll use row added or updated. And what I want to do in this case is the triggering setup is same because both are similar. So yeah, set up the trigger, and this triggering event will trigger whenever new row is added as well as existing row is updated. So what I want to do is whenever a new row is added in MySQL, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to create a model entry. But if in case if any new row got updated, I want to find that particular lead in CRM and update that lead instead of creating a lead for that case. So let's set it up. After the row added trigger, I want to find whether it's a new lead or a existing lead which is coming from MySQL. So to find that, we need to fetch the lead. So for that, I'm using fetch module entry action. Module is leads, and I have the lead name and department over there in the MySQL. So the only unique field here is the name. So I'm going to use the name coming from MySQL and search based on that name whether any lead is present in Zoho CRM or not. So fetching the lead based on the name, and after that we can use the decision to find whether it fetched any lead or not. If the fetch module entry has fetched any lead, it will have no values in it. The output of that fetch model entry will be null. Or if there is a lead with that name exists in Zoho CRM, then fetch model entry output will have some values. So we can put a decision based on the fields coming from fetch model entry. So I have used a field from fetch model entry and set it up as null. So if it is null means no lead found with that name. So for that condition, we need to create a lead, like how we did for the previous step. So it is a new row added. So that's the reason it didn't fetch any lead in CRM. And so I'm going to go and create a lead for that condition. So leads module, and same, the mapping is also like from the trigger, map the mandatory fields. Done. So this is for the condition in which fetch model entry return null. So if the fetch model entry is not null, there is an existing lead in CRM. So we just need to update the lead with the details which is coming from MySQL. So we can use update module entry and select the leads module and map the fields to update the lead for that condition. So yeah, now let's see another use case involving Zoho CRM and MySQL. So in this case, CRM is going to be my triggering application, and MySQL is the application in which I'm going to perform the action. So to set up this flow, create a flow and name it. We're going to go with the same app trigger, but Zoho CRM is going to be the triggering application in this case. Zoho CRM, new lead, whenever a new lead is created, I want to trigger the flow. So new lead is the trigger. Select the connection. Done. The trigger is set now. In app search bar, search for MySQL and drag and drop the action which we want, which is insert row. Select the table and map the mandatory fields which is required in MySQL. Name and department are the mandatory fields. So just map those fields coming from Zoho CRM trigger to the mandatory fields. Let's test this flow. So need to create a new lead to trigger this flow. The name testing one, and then company is a mandatory field. So Zoho Flow is going to be the company name. Now the data should have received in Zoho Flow. Yeah, test it. Insert row has given the output. We have mapped the name and department field. It has populated with those values correctly. And it also given us the row ID in which the data got created. So this is the row ID in which the insert row action has created a new row. So this is the vice versa of the previous flow which we saw. CRM trigger and actions performed in MySQL. So not only MySQL, since the triggers and action for all the 4 SQL applications in Zoho Flow are same, instead of MySQL, you can use PostgreSQL or SQL Server or MariaDB or whatever application you want. Just the application is different, but the functionalities and working of all the SQL applications will be similar. And make sure for what on-prem or cloud you want to create the connection. Two things you need to be careful while using SQL applications. One is about the connection, and then the application which you are going to use for the integration. Let's see one more use case involving Zoho Sheets and MySQL. So we have a lot of triggers for Zoho Sheet. Row added is a trigger, row updated is a trigger, or when both row added or updated is a can be used as a triggering event. So what I'm going to do is, if there is a new row entering into the sheet, I need to find if there is any data related to that available in the MySQL already. If not, create a new row in MySQL, or if there is data existing in MySQL, just update the details in MySQL based on the details coming from the Zoho Sheets trigger. Now let's see how to set up a flow for this case. Create a flow and name it app trigger. Zoho Sheet is the triggering application. So sheet triggers we have are real time. So whenever a new row gets created or updated, it will trigger the flow instantly. It's not like how the MySQL triggers work. This will trigger instantly. These are real time triggers which we have for Zoho Sheet. So select the row created or updated trigger. Select your Zoho Sheet connection and choose the spreadsheet and worksheet you want to use for this integration. And once the details are provided, click on done. Now the trigger is set. Now I want to check whether this data is already existing in MySQL or not. So for that, I need the fetch row action. Fetch row action, select the connection, and here you have to choose the table in which you want to find whether the row is existing or not. So choose the table, and this is the criteria based on which the row will be fetched. So you need to use a field and pass a value to that field so that this fetch row action can search for that data, whether it's present or not. Additionally, you can use one more field also to fetch a row from MySQL. For example, in this case, we are using name as the fetching criteria and passing the name coming from Zoho sheet. But there are chances that two people can be with the same name. So if that's the case, then you can go with one more additional key, like you can use email or phone number, like any other unique value, so that it fetches the row based on both these fields, name and phone number, or name and email. Like that also we can set it up. So yeah, if the fetch row has fetched any row, like if any existing row is already there in MySQL, then all the fetch row value will have values. And if there is no relevant rows in MySQL, then it will return null. So we are using a field from the fetch row and setting it to null. If it's null, it means no row found in MySQL, and we need to create a row for this use case, and insert row is the action for that. So use insert row and map the fields which are required. And similarly, if fetch row has output, the row ID or whatever field used in the decision will not be null, and it will fall into the default branch. And to the default branch, you can use the update row action so that it just updates the details which got updated from the Zoho sheet. So map the unique key, unique value, and the mandatory fields. And since fetch row has fetched a value, we will also have the row ID in which that data is present. So we can also map the row ID from fetch row to update the data in MySQL. So this basically performs a sync between your Zoho sheet and MySQL. Whenever a new data gets into your sheet, it will check in MySQL whether any row matching rows are present in MySQL, and the decision will check that condition. And if the row is found, it will go to the default and it will update the row in MySQL. And if no relevant rows are found, the decision will match the condition one, and condition one will execute the insert row action. So yeah, this is the use case. And you can use any other applications which are available in Zoho Flow already. Like you can, for example, we have Zoho Books already for integration. So you can use Zoho Books invoice created as a trigger. And based on the invoice created, you can collect the details from the Zoho Books. And if you have a table to store the invoice details in your MySQL, then you can use Zoho Books invoice trigger and then connect it with the MySQL action, and then map the fields from the invoice which you want. Like that, you can use whatever applications which is available in Zoho Flow. Maybe you can use two on-prem applications also, one on-prem application, and you can connect it with the cloud application, or you can connect two on-prem applications also using Zoho Flow. So, yeah, that's all for today's webinar session. We can go for the Q&A session. Please do raise your questions via the question box, in the chat box. Our next webinar is about streamlining your contract management using Zoho. So you can use this QR code to register for that webinar also. If you guys have any queries, or if you want to discuss more use cases involving these on-premises or MySQL related integrations, please do reach us out using these email addresses, and we'll be happy to help you. Thanks everyone for joining the today's webinar. Yeah, please, we'll have the questions tab open for a few more minutes and then we'll end the session. Thank you everyone for joining, and thanks for your time today. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.